talking of which. Welcome to
Hi guys, everybody.
Yeah. Hey everyone. I'm going to mess up the video for a second. Sorry, I've got audio in the background, so I apologise for that to everyone. Having a great day today.
Working out gangbusters.
Oh, it's brilliant, isn't it? I mean,
I can't imagine why though, Jen.
Oh yeah. I think it's got something to do with being hungover. But hey. Hey everyone,
You had a lot of fun on Six Pack last night.
Oh, we did, and yeah, I am so sorry. I did not realise that the intro was going to start in the corner of the screen and not the full screen, so, you know, good thing I wasn't picking my nose or anything, because my video was on display for everyone. Yeah, yay me, I'm so good at this.
Better than me, so.
It wouldn't be live if you didn't screw things up.
Yeah, it's the old Blue Peter excuse, isn't it?
It is. So, hi and welcome to everyone. Welcome to Critical Bitches today, whatever your time zone is. We have Becca, DangerHissy herself, and we're going to be doing a little bit of history talk. And Becca has something special that she's found for us to take the piss out of, and that should be fun. And of course my lovely co-host Amanda. So if you both want to say hi, should we let her guest go first?
Yeah. I don't know if you want me to say hi or she'll, but hi everyone.
Both.
Go check out my husband's channel, and I'll probably set one up eventually. Come find me on Twitter if you want to watch me ranting more.
You're a good ranter.
You want to tell people who your husband is, or?
nice and proud of that.
Yeah.
I take that as a compliment.
It is. Yes, Becca's hubby is wondering. He's in the chat, so if he wants to shell himself, he can go for it.
Yay! Hubby's here.
Links for all of us are in the description. And Amanda, what have you, aside from not getting any sleep, what have you been up to?
I got an hour. It's something. I launched my channel. Well, I mean, I uploaded the videos yesterday and put them out, but later tonight, Jay on his channel is doing the official launch, so we'll be doing that in a little bit after this at 9 Eastern time. So
Yeah.
that's
Oh,
about
so we only get an hour this morning, today. No, 9 your time.
No, it's not. Yeah, we have 2 hours
2
for the
hours.
show.
That's right. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
Cool.
No, I keep forgetting it's not 12 hours. It's 13 hours at the moment between us. So yeah, yeah. Jay, my brain's trying to get used to the fact that you guys are going back on daylight savings time again soon. So
Soon. Yeah.
yeah, like tomorrow.
There is one thing I want to say just before we start.
Yeah.
Before anyone starts. I was wearing the same clothes on Six Pack as I'm wearing now. That's because it's the same day for me.
It's the same day for me too.
It's not for me.
So before
Yeah,
anyone
it's
thinks
not for
I'm just clarify that because time zones.
Yeah, time zones. Time zones are a thing, people, and it makes it really hard when we're on different continents to... I nearly said incontinence. That would be an entirely different thing. On different continents to find the best times to have shows.
Jen, 3 minutes.
Yeah, you're
Really
right.
been
Look, that was my
More
brain
like
messing the words up. You know what that is, Becca. That wasn't,
Yeah, I do.
that
I know
wasn't-
exactly what that is.
That wasn't
But
me
hasn't
being
said the word
crude or
vagina
anything.
yet, so there's that. Oh wait, that was
It's
I
like
said it first.
when we were doing biology in high school, we were reading out of my dyslexia really messed me up. We were reading out a passage. Well, I was reading out a passage from the science book, and the line was small microscopic organisms. And you know what I read that as.
Oh my gosh.
I got a laugh in class.
I bet all
and
the
it wasn't
boys-
even
yeah.
deliberate.
No, that happens a lot. I don't know how many
It never
times
is.
I read it in my research, read organisms in my research, and tired brain goes there. So that's not
Yeah.
unheard of, and I'm not even dyslexic. I'm just
Yeah.
stupid.
No,
So
for me, it's dyslexia, though.
Yeah.
thanks for fighting me on that, Jen.
Yeah, sorry. Well, I am dyslexic. It's easy. I mean, I
No,
understand why
you're
people do that.
stupid.
No,
Yeah,
not
you're
stupid. Brain does
You're
that.
not stupid, Amanda. The
It's
brain
not-
does
Thank
that.
you.
Brain does that. No, it's
What
very
What happens
definitely.
is
No, I said
Didn't
I'm
they-
not dyslexic. I'm stupid, and then Jen agreed with me. So I
Oh,
was like,
sorry.
okay.
Yeah, but-
That wasn't what I was
Hold
doing.
on.
I was saying it was dyslexia for me. It's not stupid for you. It's our brains do that. But
I know.
okay,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm gonna go
didn't
back
they
in the
prove
corner.
that the brain only reads like the first and second part and the general shape of a word once you've learned it?
Yeah.
So you will mix up words like that anyway. 'cause
Yeah,
it's
that
normal.
And
to
if
do
you're
that.
dyslexic, you'll do it almost all the time.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's good fun words like that.
Yeah.
So, what do we want to attack first? Well, I know what you want to attack first.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right, I'll pop it up.
Someone, Jen, sent me a list
I did.
and I've been finding things. Let's start off with the shorter ones. Answers
Ancient
in
Egypt.
Genesis.
Yep.
Ancient Egypt.
Okay.
The age of the Great
Um,
Pyramid. I've got
The
it up
age
for
of the
everyone else
Great
to see.
Pyramid.
So yeah.
Cool. Let them see that. That's cool.
Okay, cool. Well, actually, how about we talk about what we're talking about first?
Oh,
Can we
yeah.
do that?
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. Okay.
So, yeah.
Wait, stop.
Yes. I'll
Dennis
stop.
went over. This is my stream tonight.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes. It's all about
I'm
Amanda. Go,
All right.
Amanda. You're in charge tonight.
We're talking about young Earth creationism and how they fuck up history. That's a good,
Yeah.
summary of that. So,
Well, I think it's going to go down the road of Christians in general fucking up history, isn't it?
Yeah.
Becca?
Well,
Yeah.
I think it's just going to go down the road of
Typically.
everyone fucking up
Yep,
history in general.
Yeah.
Now, fair warning, I'm generally a modern historian and I'm a Roman classicist, but there are certain things out of basically just basic common sense that I'm going to apply to this, but I'm not an expert. I get something wrong, tell me, I accept it, it's midnight, you know, it happens. Do your own research.
And you
Don't
really
go
think
to these
that Amanda or I are
stupid
going to pick
Christian
up if you
sites.
say anything wrong, Becca?
Yeah, but someone in the
Someone
chat
in the chat
might.
might, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
I'll start the argument on their side. What they're saying pretty much is that the idea that the pyramids are over or from more than 2000 BC is impossible because the biblical flood hadn't happened yet at that point in time.
Can I just, before we even get into what they're arguing, I want to discuss their source, the Bible.
Yeah.
Okay. The Bible, as it is in modernity, whichever version you use, if you use it, is a translation of a translation of a translation of oral histories of going back so far. It's a massive, in very simple terms, game of Chinese whispers. I don't know if you've ever played that game. You might have called it something different. Telephone, I think Americans call it.
Yeah, telephone.
That's what the Bible is. It is not a reliable source. Even if you went back to the original written Greek, you are still grappling with the fact that most of the stories in it are oral histories written down long after there is any evidence even likely to be found of the stories that they're telling. And there is very little extra biblical evidence to support some of these stories, and where it is, the details do not match.
And some of the real
it's the
originals
details in
wouldn't have
oral
even been
history
Greek,
that verify them.
would they, Becca?
Some of them would be in Greek, some of them would be in Hebrew, some would be in Aramaic. There's various languages, yeah. So it all depends. A lot of them are written, freely admitted to be written by people taking down oral histories from other people who were illiterate. I'm looking at you, Mark's Gospel. You know, they're stories that claim to be written 100 years after the fact. It's not a reliable source if you're reading a modern translation. From an anthropological point of view, it can reveal a lot about a society it was either read in or that it had an impact on. I am not saying the Bible hasn't had an impact historically. What I am saying is a lot of the stories in it, we have no real evidence for if we go outside of that book. And the issues of translation alone are serious cause for concern for anyone who is looking at this book and trying to use it as evidence. Issues of translation. There are still academics arguing over this. There are still academics retranslating things constantly. If you want an example of a different one, for the first time, a woman translated a classical ancient text and found that this text, which had been written for centuries describing women as sluts, whores, in all derogatory terms, that wasn't actually how they were described in the text. But the translations were written by men and were therefore inherently biased by the context the men lived in and their preconceived conceptions of this text.
Are you suggesting that the Bible is sexist?
Tiny bit. Although I was giving that as an example of how.
Yeah,
I was giving that as an example of how it can be done. But yeah, tiny bit. I mean, I want to see a translation of the original by a woman. That could be cool.
Yeah.
I don't speak the language to do it well enough.
I think, I mean, given some of the other translations we've seen out of it, I think a lot of the, certainly a lot of the sexism would probably disappear, and a lot of the LGBT hate would go as well, because a lot of that is mistranslation.
Yeah,
a lot of it is, or at least it's a lack of understanding of the implications of the translation.
Because a lot of the original
for example, the big Leviticus one, and I'll start with that. The big Leviticus one. is not an anti-LGBT comment.
No, it's an
What
anti-incest
it
comment.
is it was a comment telling Jews not to engage in pagan sexual practices, which were part of sacrificial and ritual rites to the pagan gods. It had nothing to do with what people got up to in their own free time. It was telling them basically don't get involved in rites of, sex rights, essentially, which happened, Venus, all the rest of them. Not my area of expertise, but that's what that was getting at. It had nothing to do with what people do in their own time, but it's been twisted so much by people who do not understand the context that those texts were written in.
And most of that twisting
and
was
that is a
Middle
major
Ages
issue
as well.
Yeah. And there is a major issue with, you have to understand that the Bible you would go into a shop and hold in your hand today, or the Bible a priest is holding in his hand today, even a Latin version, has been passed through the hands of maybe up to a dozen different people, all with their own opinions, all with their own approaches, and all with their own political agendas.
And
that are
everything
relevant
in it
to
about
our time.
sex was modified via the Catholic Church after the Council of
And the thing
Nicaea.
is,
So basically,
exactly.
it's the fuckless telling us how to fuck.
Exactly, and the problem
Well,
is as well
not necessarily
that there's
true,
books
though,
missing
because
and things as well, and there's texts missing out of it, and it contradicts itself. Now, as a historian, when I'm looking at a text or texts and sources, what I'm looking for is common threads.
And you were
The
saying,
common
Amanda?
threads are how you find the truth.
I was just saying that, before maybe 100, 200 years before now, the priests, the popes, all of them were fucking like bunnies. They
still
were
do,
open
though.
about it. So. No, but I mean, they were open about it.
Oh, yeah,
like,
yeah. But they weren't meant to be, so.
They weren't supposed to, but they did. And they had, yeah.
Notice how
they
they have very little to...
when they were doing that, so
Yeah.
they're just...
As a side question, do you think the pedophilia was just as rife back then as it is now?
Oh,
and
hell
is
yeah.
that a lot of the reason why the Bible actually says absolutely nothing about pedophilia?
The thing about pedophilia is, it wasn't known as that then. It was an entirely different culture, and we have to be careful not to apply modern cultural mores onto the past.
Yeah, but they...
Because in ancient Greece and ancient Rome, pedophilia was relatively
common.
Accepted. It was even encouraged in the upper classes as pedestry.
Mm-hmm.
And to apply our understanding of what that is to theirs is going to get us nowhere.
There was still an
Because
age
it was
before
an
it was
important
acceptable,
social-
though, for them.
Yeah.
It was a lot
There was an age
younger than
before
it
it
is
was
for
acceptable.
us, but it was there was still a lower age. So
Yeah, there would have been an age where a young man was not appropriate for an older man to take as a student, as it were. But there would also have been an age very much younger than what we're talking about when we talk about paedophilia, that it was acceptable. We're talking about pretty much as soon as a boy's bollocks had dropped, he was considered as good as a man, and he'd got a basic education. So we're talking by the age of 12, 13, 14 at the latest. I don't know how old are boys when their bollocks drop. I genuinely don't know. But we're talking early teens.
We need some answers.
I could ask him, but he's pissed at me, so.
In ancient Rome...
Sorry.
Yeah, so in ancient Rome, boys were being declared men and taking the toga at 13 or 14 years old. Commodus did it at 15 or 16, and it was considered late. It was considered that his father had done him cheap and had done him badly by making him wait so long.
Well, we didn't have the concept of childhood at all until the 20th century, so...
The concept of childhood is a relatively new one, but insofar as they had the concept of being a child, a non-entity whose only requirement was to obey and to be educated in whatever role you were placed in, and then becoming a man and becoming politically active, becoming economically active, there was that differentiation.
And yet,
But
so we were giving.
yes.
So as a society, back even a couple of hundred years ago, well, even less than that, 150 years ago, we were giving adult responsibilities to 12-year-olds, basically.
Yeah, we had chimney sweeps who were like 8-9 years old, less than 200 years ago.
And whilst that is exploitation, in some respects some people within society have pushed it the other way and not prepared to give responsibility to 12-year-olds. Kids who are just getting into high school. Oh no, you can't take any responsibility for yourself, and I think that's also wrong too, because they're not.
I think there's a
most kids
difference
aren't
though
incapable.
between.
Oh yes,
I think there is a
agree.
difference though between responsibility and sexual consent.
Oh no! I wasn't talking about sexual consent. I was just talking about responsibilities. There's a lot of people who say,
Yeah.
"Oh no, you are not responsible for anything until you turn 18 or 21 or whatever."
Well,
And I'm
that's
like,
wrong because you
yeah,
don't suddenly
no.
grow a brain at 18.
That's right.
You have to
And
develop.
many kids are very
teenager.
mature at a fairly young age, and if you're not giving them some responsibilities, you can't suddenly expect them to take responsibility when they turn 18.
Exactly.
And
this is almost what the Greeks were getting at with pedestry.
Yeah.
They put a young boy with an older man, and the older man teaches him what to do and how to live, how to be a good husband, how to, balance his books, how to, manage his slaves and his household, whatever he was doing. He learned that from this man who then, it built a relationship, like almost a patron-client relationship going on.
Yeah.
So...
At the same time, did he really need to fuck the kid to teach him these things, though?
The idea kind of was that he was teaching him everything, and the idea was that the kid was in the feminine role, and it was kind of the payback for the education. It was kind of, you scratch my back, I pull on your dick. I don't know exactly, but basically, it's...
It was a bit worse than that, Becca.
Yeah. I mean, there's some beautifully, actually, if you can get past the fact that, and you can't really tell in some of the artwork, but there's some beautifully erotic, homoerotic artwork from ancient Greece on like different vases and things. Vases. I spend too much time around Americans. I can't say it anymore.
Sorry about that.
And it is, and it there's some really, it's erotic, and even for our time, it's, if you saw that on sale in a shop, you'd be horrified. You'd have to put it on the top shelf behind a black screen.
Yeah.
I feel like it was almost the porn mag of its day.
It kind of was. Well, actually, the porn mag of its day was the graffiti. The graffiti that was rampant and like really pretty graphic. That would
the graffiti
everywhere.
My specialty is more Pompeii than is more Roman than Greek, and the graffiti at Pompeii is hilarious.
Yeah, it is.
The humor still stands up. 2,000 years and human beings have not changed a bit. We're still joking about the size of the gladiator's dick, and like it's not changed at all.
Yeah,
it hasn't. And which prostitute is willing to do what for how many coins? The humor hasn't changed. It really hasn't.
No.
But going on to ancient Greece now, I've got my little rant about the source of the Bible and the history and the context out of the way. This dude, and his Great Pyramids at 2,550 BC. Yes, Great Pyramids at 2,550 BC. Your Bible does not get to dictate how old the fucking pyramids are.
No.
Science has established how old they are. We have the pyramids. We have dated them. We have found bodies in there that have been carbon dated in the bones, which I'm sure one of these two wonderful sciencey people can explain, because I sure as hell can't. But it's reliable and it works. And I am telling you that the pyramids have been there that long.
Oh, definitely.
Okay, right. Who wants to explain carbon dating?
Amanda, or do I need to try and do this?
Go ahead, Jen.
Oh, thanks. Okay. And I'm not going to remember the half-life of carbon, but
You don't have to.
yeah. Basically, radioactive isotopes. Well, all isotopes, but radioactive isotopes have a half-life. So that's how long it takes for half the mass of that isotope to decay into whatever they're going to decay into. We usually carbon date with carbon-14. Which
carbon-14.
Yeah, I think it's got a half-life of about 30,000 years. Is it? It's about that. It's not
something
huge.
like that. It's
so,
not huge. It's I know we can't carbon date anything past the 50s, but that's for a totally different reason.
Yeah, no, that's to do with us screwing up.
Yeah.
Our own carbon levels from testing nuclear weapons.
Actually, the half-life of carbon-14 is closer to 6,000 years.
It's 6,000 years.
Yeah, 6,000 years. So when we test it, basically what it means is if we carbon date something, we can be accurate to within 6,000 years. We can actually be more accurate than that because we can calculate how far into
our accuracy
it is
within about 400 years with carbon dating, I think.
Yeah.
It is. So we know that if you've got a mass of carbon-14, in 6,000 years, half of it will have decayed down, and I can't remember what carbon-14 decays down into, but I'm sorry. Chemistry's not my thing.
We need marrow.
Yeah, we need marrow. But basically half of it decays down into whatever it decays down into, so you've got half the mass left of the carbon-14. If you know what the quantity of carbon-14 should have been originally, you can figure out how long it's been for that to decay. And with organic items, we know what the carbon cycle is and how quickly carbon-14 is replenished into organics. So if you've got a bone, you know how much carbon-14 it would have had in it when it's alive. As soon as the person, animal, whatever dies, that carbon-14 is no longer being replenished, so it starts decaying. So we can figure out from the amount of carbon-14 that's left in the bone when we find it, how old it is by how much of it has now disappeared. So
yeah, so that's carbon dated. So we know how old the bodies in there were. Now, this next one, Egyptian chronology. This person says instead of assuming the accuracy of traditional Egyptian chronology and modifying the Bible, we should examine traditional chronology to see if it's as reliable as some claim to be. It isn't. It isn't. Egyptian chronology, which again, Egypt is not my specialist area, but this just really pissed me off. Egyptian chronology, is incredibly accurate. We have the material sources, the material culture. Archaeologists have been working on this for years and years and years. We know we've got the best scientists, the best archaeologists, the best historians comparing the material culture to the textual sources, to the translations, and back again to make sure it fits before we make a comment, because that's how actual historians do things, instead of going to one book and accepting that it's fact without questioning it.
And the best part about it is when other cultures like Babylon or Greece talk about things that happened in Egypt, the dates correlate.
Jeez.
Wow.
Yes, because we have more than one source. We have material sources which we can accurately date. You can't fake carbon dating. You can't fake these things. Well, you can, but you won't do it properly. No, you can't. I promise you can't. Okay.
The thing with young Earth creationists, though, is that it doesn't matter the proof that you tell them. It doesn't matter the proof that you show them or evidence or anything like that. They are all under the assumption that the entire scientific community is out to get them and is therefore lying for a chance to take people out of Christianity and bring them into secularism. Yeah. This is their whole worldview. So it doesn't matter what you say to them, what you show them, anything like that. They're going to believe what their, creationist science magazines tell them, because not only do those science magazines tell them this bullshit, but they also tell them the scientific community and the secular world is out to destroy us, so we have to hold together strong.
So how do they explain that the monk who came up with this stupid 4,000 years ago date, 1,200 years ago, so it's nearly 6,000 years now, whatever.
6,000.
This monk who came up with that date actually admitted that it was bullshit. How do they
ignore,
square that away?
They ignore that. Was it Aquinas who did the date adding?
It wasn't. No, it was someone else. It was a different name.
It's going to bug me now. And Siri in the chat has just said carbon-14 becomes nitrogen-14. So that's the decay chain.
But yeah, ancient Egypt was a thing that existed and was incredibly advanced for its time. They have technologies and mechanical structures and structural mechanics and engineering, because I'm talking around that word because it just came into my head, that we still cannot recreate today. There are still archaeologists trying to figure out how the bleeding hell the Romans built buildings that lasted so long and roads that lasted so long with the right cement, trying to figure it out. Okay,
Roman cement is actually very good.
Roman cement is the best.
Yeah, and
they still haven't figured out the actual full recipe. They're getting close and they're trying different things, but they haven't worked it out entirely yet.
We have better cements for structural loads, but not for the length of time they will last.
Yeah, exactly. And the longevity is...
According to the young Earth creationists, which I think is fucking crazy.
I'm sorry, say that again, Amanda.
The young Earth creationists, they think that Abraham built the pyramids that came over from...
I had a young Earth creationist tell me the Romans, quote, came along in 27 BC. Now, if anyone knows anything about Roman history,
built an entire fucking city. Yeah.
No, the thing is, 27 BC is an important date in Roman history. It's the year Augustus was made emperor. It's the beginning of the empire. So technically, the Romans did pop into existence. The Roman Empire began to exist in 27 BC. Yeah. But before the Roman Empire was the Roman Republic, and was the Roman Kingdom, and was the Etruscans, and the tribal lands before that of the Latins.
Yeah.
We can trace it back. Even if you believe that, Aeneas carried his father there and Remus suckled a wolf and murdered his brother, we still have evidence that there was life in that area that well predates 27 BC. We have written sources.
What I think is hilarious is that the young Earth creationists actually think that the Hebrews were in Egypt.
Yeah, that's...
Wait, what?
That's been...
Moses was
Let me clarify something. The Egyptian pyramids are an incredible feat of engineering, design, and skill. It is possible that they used for the grunt work large numbers of slaves. In fact, it's highly likely. However, suggesting by any stretch of the imagination that means that these things were built entirely by slaves is fucking insane. The average slave was not literate, and the pyramids are covered in hieroglyphs. The average slave was not educated in the mathematics required to calculate the angles and the building and the engineering required for these buildings. There is no way that this was done. Maybe slaves pushed the blocks, but that's probably about it. We're talking grunt work. We're talking the kind of thing, they were at best, they would have been the Egyptian equivalent to the kind of work you would trust to a first-year apprentice.
Well,
pass me my screwdriver, pass me my spam.
Built canals and rafts to shift blocks on, and they also had elephants to help move them. So
exactly,
it wasn't just human power; it was their intelligence in doing these things. But the point I was making is that there's no evidence to suggest that the Hebrews were ever in Egypt at all.
No,
and
they certainly
exactly
weren't slaves or anything like that.
Oh, and this thing that keeps going around on Twitter every so often about chariot wheels being found in the Red Sea, it's bullshit. It's complete and utter bullshit. They were left there in like centuries later by historians looking by mistake. It's been proven. It's bullshit. Absolute utter claptrap. That sea was never split. There was no way in hell that a bunch of Egyptians would have been stupid enough to ride chariots into it, even if it did. And anyone who tries to cross that thing, like with walls of water on either side, like the Disney DreamWorks movie or whatever, is a fucking idiot and deserves to drown when it falls back to itself. At best, they think they can date a possible tsunami to the projected date of the flight of the Israelites. However, that is incredibly convoluted and it requires great leaps of logic in order to get there. And great leaps of logic are neither historical nor scientific and therefore are irrelevant and fucking stupid.
I mean, it's like in their passage here, we have to correct the chronology of Egypt to make it fit the Bible. No, that's not correcting. You do it the other way round. That's making shit up, you dipshits.
Yes, that's making shit up. Okay? Okay. Egypt and the Old Testament now. What is it? Having a correct chronology for Egyptian history provides a basis for identifying archaeological finds that support the accuracy of the Old Testament. They only do that if the Old Testament actually supports the findings, which it doesn't. They're arguing in circles.
My Bible is right, so therefore my Bible is right, so therefore we make the rest of history fit my Bible.
Yeah. If I have a book, I have the Harry Potter books here. In the Harry Potter books, there is reference to a train station called King's Cross. There is reference to a platform 9 3/4. I can go to King's Cross and go to platform 9 3/4 because it's now a tourist attraction. That doesn't mean I'm going to run at the wall between platform 9 and platform 10 and flatten my face.
Well, you're a muggle, so you wouldn't
because
get it
I'm
anyway.
not a fucking idiot.
Fucking nerds.
Right? Okay? And no one is ever going to dig up King's Cross and find a platform 9 3/4. And that's how we know it doesn't exist. And that's how we know that's where the book deviates from fact.
Yeah.
And no amount of pretending is going to make that exist. So
I think a lot of religious people who read religious texts, and this is no go on you as being a pagan, Becca, but a lot of people forget that a lot of the stories that come from the religion were stories to tell your kids to educate them in your culture.
Absolutely. A lot of them were just moral stories. They were Aesop's fables. They were, they were the monster under the bed. They were stories designed to teach or to establish parameters.
I mean, anyone who for 5 seconds thinks the Book of Job was about a real person is just tapped in the head.
Insane. Yeah.
They truly are.
But that's what it is. Now, there's that. Now, this one, Ramesses did not build the temples and statues. He hacked the builders' names off and inserted his own. First of all, Ramesses didn't build anything. Ramesses was the pharaoh. He would not have got his pretty little hands dirty. Because if you want to talk and come out with things that are that stupid, I am going to come back at you with things that are that stupid.
I've just got this image of this ruler in the middle of the night sneaking out of his palace with a chisel and a hammer.
Yeah, like the Catholic Church and all the gorgeous statues that they desecrated.
They tap the penises off and put fig leaves on.
The Great Castration, yeah.
It's so fucking horrible.
Ramesses II, again, not my area, but Ramesses was a very well-known Egyptian pharaoh. He's probably the most well-known Egyptian pharaoh other than King Tut. because everyone's heard of King Tut.
I don't know why. He was nobody. He was a crippled little nothing. So
it's because he was found and the way he was found and the
Yeah.
supposed curse of King Tut, I think.
Yeah, it's a King Tut is basically a conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
Which is why
That's
everyone
all
knows
it is.
it.
It's a fun story.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
It's modern mythology. That's what it is.
Yeah. It's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Now, the thing with Ramesses is, first of all, anything that's built under his reign is ascribed to him because that's historical convention. Okay, when we say that someone built something, we're not saying they did it themselves. If I say that, you know, as an example, Queen Victoria built a monument to her husband, I'm not saying she went out with bricks and mortar and did it herself. I'm saying she ordered it and probably paid for it. That's what that means. You know, just as a quick aside for that. Now, looking at this, there is, as far as I'm aware, very little. Ramesses did use a lot of building works as propaganda for his victories. That's par for the course. You know, it's fairly standard. Everyone does it throughout history. Now, because I'm just looking at, I can't find anything, and I am literally searching as I'm looking here. There's nothing I can find in any source that I would consider reliable. I mean, it's not even on Wikipedia.
Yeah.
Any reference to him destroying previous works and putting his name to them. So if he did, or if there's any record of that, it's the Christians are very good at trying to demonize other cultures and other historical sources.
Yeah.
And I would say with Ramesses, if you're interested in any of the history of anything that I clearly know nothing about and I'm Googling frantically, I would always recommend your first stop for any information should be Encyclopedia Britannica. It's a lot more reliable than Wikipedia.
Yeah,
and it's
please
online.
don't use
There's
Wikipedia.
nothing reliable about Wikipedia. The thing everyone has to remember about Wikipedia is anyone can change shit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
Wikipedia, always check the source says what you think it says, especially before you put it into classwork.
Oh yeah, I had when I taught, I had a lot of students that would cite Wikipedia. I'm like,
I had a tutor. This is a great story, so I'm going to tell it. I had a tutor who the night before an essay was due, and the essay was about Pope. No, not Pope Urban. Which one was it?
not Pope Joan.
No. I can't remember what the subject was. But essentially, he went on Wikipedia the night before and edited the Wikipedia page. The night before the essay was due. 12 people in a class of 70 quoted the Wikipedia page he had edited with this false fact directly. Hadn't bothered to check where it came from.
Yeah.
Because they'd done it in a hurry. And he caught them. And that's the thing about Wikipedia, whereas Encyclopedia Britannica is researched, it's cited. Any website that doesn't give you the option to cite it as an RIS file is probably not reliable because that's the academic standard.
So it's fine to use Wiki to get you started, but then use those links at the bottom of Wiki and check the sources, because if it's not in the sources, probably somebody edited to fuck it up.
Yeah.
Or just thought they knew better. I mean, there's so many people on Wikipedia who think they know better than experts.
And at the end of the day, the Bible doesn't have footnotes either. That should tell you a lot.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's just me being flippant, but it is true.
The Bible is not a history book.
Not really flippant. That's
any history book that doesn't have footnotes is not a history book. It's a pop culture book. Be careful. I would not recommend, if your historian cannot tell you where they got their information, It's because they pulled it out of the backside.
I mean,
10
the best
minutes before
analogy to the Bible
article was
is
due.
Aesop's fables.
Yeah, pretty
That
much.
is what it is. It
yeah.
can be a statement of culture, and it can certainly highlight what life was like for the Hebrews, ancient Hebrews, to some extent. It's not a history book. No.
Yeah. I mean, from what I can see here, Ramesses was a very popular pharaoh, so I don't see why he would need to take other people's work for his own. Some of the works he did were begun under Seti.
Yeah.
But he finished them, or he did the majority of the work. So therefore, you can argue that. You can probably argue that if you want to get really twisted and take it way beyond what it is. So I can't find any reference to anything like that, and I'm going to stop now because.
Right, shall we move on to something else?
Yeah, I'm going to move on.
Do you want to move on to your one, Becca?
Yeah, so Jen's had a bit of a troll. And, well, I say troll. Jen has been trolling a Christian.
I don't think she's trolling.
No. And do you want to put the image up, Jen? Because
I might have to resize it just a smidge.
So, I am gonna actually, Rings promised me a slot on his channel at some point to go through this in depth and debunk every single point, and I will. But what I want to do is just the top one. And I want to talk you through how historians look at Tacitus. And it is Tacitus, don't come at me, it's a hard C in Latin. It's just that English-speaking languages are fucking stupid. Yes, it's Tacitus. I googled it, I checked, I asked 2 different Latin professors, it's Tacitus. Facts that Jesus existed from non-Christian sources. I wrote notes. And I'm going to talk you through why Tacitus does not prove Jesus existed.
We all know why Josephus doesn't, because it's interpolations and he doesn't actually mention Jesus, he only mentions early Christians. So.
Right. So, lots of dates and what have you here. Stop me if I lose you. Nero died in 68 AD. And the fire of Rome was in 64 AD. Okay. Tacitus was born in 56 AD. Which means at the time of the Great Fire, he was 8 years old. That's important. That's the first point. He was writing about the Great Fire more than 50 years after it happened as an adult. And Tacitus was of the senatorial class, which means that he was politically reliant on the Senate and on other people in Rome. Which meant he had to be careful what he wrote and who he applauded and who he didn't. I will come back to that. The Annals covers the years 14 to 68 AD, and the Histories covers the years 69 to 96 AD. They are all based on second-hand accounts. None of this is a primary source, even if it is written as such. Therefore, we have to presume that Tacitus, we have to rely on his analysis of the sources he used. And he presents a lot of the stories very uncritically. He freely admits that he's including rumours and that he's including speculation and political goings-on that may or may not have been true. In some cases more obviously than others, but the fact that he includes them all casts a doubt across all of his work immediately. Now, he was an orator at law. That's orator with an O, not narrator, if my accent went funny there. He's basically a proto-defense lawyer. The guy lied for a living, basically. He made speeches for a living. He defended people. And he was a politician. He was of the senatorial class. You have to understand that in his context. Now, Nero was...
And we all know how politicians lie, because
Yeah.
that basically as soon as they open their fucking mouths.
Yeah, except Chris, because Chris is nice.
Yeah.
But when Nero
Kidding,
died,
Chris. I love you, Chris.
he was...
Yeah, we love you, Chris.
There's a few different versions of how he went. Either he was ambushed by his own guard, or he topped himself when he knew the guard were coming. Either way, he ended up dead on the orders of Galba, who was his political enemy and who was coming along. Now, he was erased from some monuments, and this is a common Roman practice. And the idea was that someone had been so terrible they were erased from history. Now, when that's done because this person is pretty universally hated. And so that's the context in which Tacitus is writing about Nero 50 years after that. So this is a guy who's grown up all his life, would have heard how Nero was a bastard and every bitch under the sun, or whatever you want to call him. You know, I'm sure the Aussie in the room can come up with far better insults than I can.
I'm not.
But yeah, it followed, after Nero's death followed the Year of Four Emperors. Massive political upheaval from which the Roman culture took a long time to recover from and was dealing with for a long time afterwards. And I'm not going to go into all of it, but that's the culture Tacitus was writing in. Now, Tacitus himself states in the histories that he owed Nero's rivals his political position as an adult. He is not a reliable source on Nero. So when he talks about how Nero tortured Christians, threw them to the lions, set fire to them and used them as torches or anything else, you should take it with a pinch of salt. Take it in the same way you take stories of Nazis bayoneting babies and anti-war protesters spitting at Vietnam veterans. Did it happen? Does it matter? Or is the story what matters behind it? You know, it's very thinly veiled propaganda, and there's not a lot of evidence for a lot of stuff he was saying outside of his own writing. And
Can I interject for a second?
Go for it.
A lot of what Hissy's talking about, Godless Engineer has a whole series on. So if this interests you and you want to learn more, even more about it, check out his channel. It's really
And I'm
good,
sure
really in depth.
I'm sure it's better research than my half a page of A4 scribbled on my lunch break.
No, you're doing great. It's more laden with fuckwits and motherfuckers, which is awesome.
So if he's not accurate on Nero, we cannot presume he's accurate on anything else either. And he talks about the existence of Christians. This he talks about. But the existence of Christians does not prove the existence of Christ.
Exactly.
All the existence of Christians prove is that at some point someone told a story that people believed.
If anything,
that's
the
all
existence
it
of
proves.
Christians prove the existence of Paul.
It proves the existence of Paul, potentially. It proves the existence of Peter, potentially.
One of my biggest issues with it is that ancient
But it does
Rome
not prove.
was like really good at keeping perfect records, even of their slaves. And there is not one shred of evidence of his existence whatsoever. And I've heard so many people come at me with the, well, they actually weren't that good. No, they were. They were
No,
better
they
than
were
some
that
other.
good.
Yeah, exactly.
They were that brilliant. We can find out what the cost of a loaf of bread was and what people's wages were and what the cost of a slave was and whether a slave costs more if they had good teeth or not. We know what the Romans got up to. Their records were impeccable. The only reason there are gaps in our understanding of the Romans, slight as they are in this day and age, is because the evidence did not survive.
Yeah.
So unless the evidence didn't survive, you can presume it's reliable if it's Roman evidence.
But you see, this
It
is
might
the
not
thing
have
when
been
you're talking
translated
about
properly, but it
Jesus.
is reliable.
You're talking about somebody who's supposed to be the starter of this big, enormous faith that became the centerpiece for the Roman Empire, and they don't have any evidence for him.
And the Romans
That's the
took
thing.
no record of him. There's
That's
records
right.
of Christians,
Oh yeah, definitely records of Christians.
but there is no record of Jesus. And this rebel in a Roman outpost under this Pontius Pilate, that kind of rebellion, that kind of uprising, especially in the context of Rome, where they were always having uprisings by Jews. The Jews were just really irritating to the Romans. They were constantly uprising. You know, something like that, that kind of story would have made it back to the center of the empire and been recorded somewhere. And it's just not. We know, for example, from extra-biblical sources how Paul was killed. We know when he was killed, why he was killed, what the charges were against him. Because it's in the Roman records, because Paul was a Roman citizen. They kept extensive records of everything. It's not right to say that those records cannot be relied upon, because they can. There are some errors, yes, there's always human errors. There's always going to be that one merchant who tried to like rip people off and so his grain's worth twice as much or anything like that. That's going to happen. There's going to be accounting errors and things. But when we're talking about records of crucifixions on the Jewish holidays in a Jewish area, surely the Jews should have some record of this as well.
Yeah.
But there's just nothing. You know, and this whole thing about people talking about parts of the cross and, you know, have we found the cave? And no.
Well, that's another thing too, though.
Because the Bible geographically does not map onto anywhere in the world. The stories of the Bible do not map on properly anywhere.
Which is another sign of being mythology and not fact.
Exactly. In mythology, you can get from one area to another in 3 days flat.
There were
in
so
real
many
life at that time you can't.
And in mythology, you can take 40 years to travel a distance that should have taken you 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm. I just feel like they got lost and were going around in circles all that time.
Well, I'm not surprised, given in the book they were following.
Yeah, well, look at who they were following as well. But that I wanted to make the comment about Tacitus because I've seen so many Christian apologists use it. Please, you've got the basic information I've just given you. You've heard me rant about it. It's very easy to find it. Literally just Google the word Tacitus reliability and look for a source that doesn't have Bible or Christian in the name. And you will find everything you need to know. You don't have to know Latin. You don't have to know any history. You just have to know how to count so you get your dates in the right order. And you can debunk that. That is very easy to do. I've just done it. And I don't claim to be a genius. Plus, it's like 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm definitely not a genius at this time in the morning. So, you know, that one really annoyed me because that is something it took me, like I said, 10 minutes on my lunch break to debunk that thoroughly and scribble down notes to debunk that. Again, with Dio, they like to quote, and they'd like to quote Pliny the Younger. Those two were writing 150 years after the fact. They were using Tacitus as a source. So we're now 4 degrees of separation at best from what happened if something happened. And, you have to understand the Romans for centuries genuinely believed that their founders had been, Romulus and Remus. That they were Romulus and Remus.
Yeah.
What I think
because it was a part of the culture to accept these kind of stories. So, and there's a great one about that, by the way. They weren't suckled by a wolf, they were suckled by a prostitute. Just to put that out there, the word wolf and the word prostitute, it was an idiom, it was slang. It was a prostitute. She brought him home to the husband. They raised them. That's how that story should have been told and went.
And that's
and
not
probably
as good as the
what
one
it
about
was
being suckled by a wolf, though.
It's not, but it is quite possible that the wolf terminology is more like an idiom, and it was convoluted over time. It's quite possible the Romans knew it was just an analogy or just a metaphor.
Or it's even possible that the Romans actually took it to mean prostitute and not wolf.
Yeah, but at some point they probably did.
Yeah, and then it changed. It probably is more changed for us because we have this romantic look at classical literature more so than a realistic one.
And the thing about classical literature is it changed with the wind. Every time the Romans found something vaguely interesting in ancient Greece, they yoinked it, twisted it, and made it their own.
Yeah.
And I say this as someone who follows Roman paganism. It's just a yoinked, twisted version of ancient Greece. And that was pretty twisted to start with. So, take it with a grain of salt. That's my big one on Tacitus. There's other various ones. Even it amuses me. Answers in Genesis amuse me because it said Josephus should not be relied upon too heavily. So even Answers in Genesis is well aware that Josephus is very easily debunked, which is why I didn't pay any attention to it because I didn't have time. But I imagine if even they're telling their own people not to use that as a source, it'll take you all of about 3 seconds to find something to throw back at them with. Google is your friend.
Okay. And just quickly, Amanda, you know the picture you sent me the other day that Angel did?
Mm-hmm.
Can you tweet it to me again? Because I can't find it.
Fuck me, Jen. Okay, can I say something first? Because I've tried to talk like a million times for the past 15 minutes.
Please say something first.
Okay. I wanted to say that when it comes to young Earth creationism, though, as opposed to the rest of Christianity who follow Christ and Jesus, and that's what they base their religion on, young Earth creationism, it's about Genesis, even before Christ. So
yeah.
That's really
that's even worse because Genesis it is so fundamentally flawed. I mean, arguing about the historicity of Jesus is not necessarily a good position for us to take directly against.
If you're arguing the historicity of Jesus, you're accepting the existence of Jesus.
Yeah.
Or the concept of Jesus, and you shouldn't because you've lost the minute you do that.
What
you should say from the beginning is show me evidence that he existed at all.
And I think it's the wrong argument for us to have because whether or not an itinerant preacher existed or not is irrelevant. What's relevant to whether or not Christianity is true or not is whether he was a God man. And if you can disprove that, which you can with science and everything, that that stuff that you say he did, he obviously did not do. Then you're in a lot stronger position than trying to deny his existence. I mean, it's a good intellectual debate. Did he actually exist? Is there good evidence for him? But as an argument against Christians, right. I think it's a bad
someone else who's probably more sarcastic and better at this than I am. If you ever get a Christian apologist say that there is evidence that Jesus was a god, come back at them and tell them you've got evidence that Hercules was a god. It's all there in the Iliad. Heracles, Hercules, whichever way you want to pronounce it. And you will have Christian apologists come up with you about hermeneutics, which is basically the study of interpretation. It's historiography. It's got nothing to do with proving the evidence. Okay, hermeneutics is saying, I am studying the historian, not the story they're telling.
Yeah.
And you are studying the historian in order to understand the writing they've provided. You cannot understand any historian's take, even mine or anyone else's, without knowing where they're coming from. I'm coming from a position of, I think Christian apologists are fuckwits.
Yeah.
Therefore, everything I say or do with regard to this topic will be coloured by that opinion. If you don't know that, you cannot properly assess my opinion. You cannot properly assess what I'm telling you.
Quote from one of Ken Ham has like a daily magazine, which is fucking weird. But
Ken Ham is fucking weird. So
yeah. The quote goes as such: "It is not the lack of evidence that leaves young Earth creation outside the walls of the scientific academy, but the fallen nature of the evolutionary scientists themselves who sinfully reject God." So this goes back to what I was saying before, that the scientific community is just trying to get rid of creationism in general and trying to destroy Christianity. In fact, the young Earth creationists themselves don't like the creation or the Christians that believe in evolution or believe that the Earth is more than 6,000 or 10,000 or whatever years old. So they hate them almost as much as they hate us, because they feel like they're pulling down Christianity as a whole.
Well, if you listen to most of their preaching isn't to us. It's not to atheists or pagans. It's to those Christians who aren't young Earth creationists.
Yeah. They preach to the choir.
They're preaching to the choir, and they're trying to convince them into their way of thinking, trying to convince them against evolution and against science. And it's like, yeah, I mean, they have to invent words for us like scientism. You're followers of scientism.
Wait, Hissy, what was it? Neo-something? Neo-Darwinism.
Neo-Darwinism. Right.
Neo-Darwinist evolution. It was fucking weird. I don't know, but it's just...
I am not a scientist. I'm not an evolutionist. Damn it, I'm a historian. We've established that.
I know, but
even I know that there is no such thing as neo-Darwinist evolution.
But doesn't neo mean not quite or man-made?
Oh, new. It means new.
Okay. New.
So
new Darwinism.
Or new Darwinism or alt Darwinism, if you like. There's no such thing, because even I know that Darwin's theory is being proven, as far as we can tell, from archaeological record, from scientific exploration and study and analysis, and that the word theory in scientific circles does not mean the same thing as I have a theory that it's going to rain tomorrow.
Exactly.
I have a theory it's going to rain tomorrow because I live in England and it's March. This is a fairly good theory. It's probably sound. It is not, however, backed up by any fact, because I haven't watched the weather forecast. When scientists talk about theories, what they're talking about is theorems, things that have been mathematically and scientifically proven beyond reasonable doubt. I know this is a layperson, and I'm saying this as a layperson, but I think it's good to come from a layperson and not someone who's all sciencey sometimes.
Yeah.
When scientists tell me shit, I listen.
Theories are backed up by science facts and observation, but have to be falsifiable. So they're not just asserted, they are backed up and they can be proven wrong.
They are quantifiable, and the results are repeatable and can be repeated and gained in a lab setting. Yeah. That's what peer review is, and peer review applies across all academics.
Yeah.
If you come to a conclusion, you should be able to reasonably assume, if that conclusion is correct, that someone else with the same set of data in a completely different part of the world but with a similar education to yourself will come to the same conclusion.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That is because that is the fact.
The same results.
Yeah. If I put water in a kettle and put it on, I can assume that it will eventually boil. I can assume that because that's what happens to everyone when they put water in a kettle and it boils. If it only happened to me, I'd be ringing the papers.
But Christian science is different for every single Christian.
One of their main arguments against evolution is the fact that we have proven with evolution that it has taken millions of years to occur, except in their case, they will not believe that the Earth has been around for millions of years, therefore we're lying and evolution is false. That's
but
their
yet, on
logic.
On the other side of that, they believe a small subset of each of their kinds was taken on board the ark, and we had accelerated evolution after the flood to get all the variation in animals that we have on the planet.
I have something to say about the flood too.
That is absolutely nuts.
There is no archaeological evidence for a flood.
No.
Well, no, but they believe it is because there are marine animals that are found in places that don't have oceans right now.
Yes, but
which is
yes, that's because of. I'm going to let the climate scientists take over this one.
This is your subject, Amanda.
It's just because, plate tectonics and the fact that sedimentary rock and everything has shifted over time in the millions of years the planet has been around. So where there is land now, there used to be oceans, and oceans covered a big part of this planet, especially, we think of Pangea and how we just had this little land mass compared to what it is today. But because they're creationists, younger creationists, they can't believe that, that ever happened because it would have taken way too long and we've only been around 6,000 years. So obviously
Amanda,
there was a flood.
How come there are shells on the top of mountains?
Because of plate tectonics. This is GCSE geography. Keep up.
I
know. The thing is, I learned about plate tectonics when I was 14.
Yeah,
it's not difficult.
Yeah, I know. But this is the kind of arguments they say, but there's shells on the top of mountains. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and they also believe
rise up when two continents come together, and they rose up where there used to be an ocean.
Yeah. Look at what happened after Krakatoa. Give them the example of Krakatoa. I remember this case study. The sheer amount, the area of land that was created after the blow up of Krakatoa.
Yeah.
Like another volcano took its place. So much not molten lava. What's it called underground? Magma came up and formed a second volcano where the old one was because it had blown so hard.
Yeah. But
it's not difficult.
That thing aside, even if you ignore carbon dating and you ignore the fossil records and the geological evidence, we have tree ring dating, which is incredibly accurate, and we've got the cross look between different trees that we found both fossilized and alive, and we can go back nearly 10,000 years just with trees.
Yeah.
And then ice cores go back even further, and we know how accurate they are. So, I'm sorry, your 6,000 years fails on every possible way we can look at it with things on Earth. And then we can kick your ass when it comes to astronomy. Because, I'm sorry, light takes a certain amount of time to get here from somewhere, and we can measure how far away things are in space, so we know the universe, at least from measuring within our galaxy, even if you ignore other galaxies, is hundreds of thousands of years old.
Exactly.
Dave asked a question in the chat about pole flipping. How many times is that talked about in the Bible? I'm pretty sure it's not, but pole flipping happens about something like 500,000 years.
Yeah.
Our last pole flip was about 40,000 years ago. So obviously that was well before the 6,000 years of the Earth, and they're not going to believe that or talk about it. So
yeah,
Dave.
Well, they don't think it happens, despite the fact it looks like we're in the process of it starting to happen again. So
it's a soft flip, though.
Yeah, it's a soft flip. Yeah. So
sorry.
So yeah, because a lot of them, when you say pole flipping, think the whole planet goes.
No.
Yes, nerdy. The Earth is a lot older than Dave. Yeah. I know that's really hard to grasp, but imagine if Dave was even older. It's huge. It's really old.
I mean, all the different evidences in the different disciplines of science show that the world is a lot older than 6,000 years. When you have that much correlation, you can say with fairly good certainty that the universe and our planet is older than 6,000 years. It's not hard. It's not hard to do the math. It's not hard to do most of these observations yourself. You don't even have to rely on other people. You can, with a little bit of investment in the telescope or in going out and actually looking at geology or going and having a look in the museums and stuff and looking at the tree rings and how this stuff works, you can find this stuff out for yourself.
There's a lot of weird contradictions between the idea of young Earth creationism and what is even said in the Bible. Like part of creationists believe that there wasn't a firmament. They believe there was a water canopy. I think it was Genesis 1:6 that talks about a water canopy, and so that's what they believe, and that it eventually, when the flood happened, that was God just dropping the water canopy and flooding the earth. Except in other parts of the Bible, the firmament is described. One of them, one of them said steel or something like that, some kind of metal. The other one calls it sapphire rocks or something like that. Yeah. So it contradicts with what they believe. So they kind of ignore those parts of the Bible and stick with, what they want for their own agenda.
I think the basics that Ham goes with is the firmament is like a glass-ish structure and there's water above it and it leaks through the firmament. I mean, not his idea. The flat Earth Ham doesn't believe that because he still thinks the world is round, so he's got to follow normal astronomy, but still.
We've launched space shuttles.
Yes, we've launched space shuttles. Flat Earth is just complete nut jobs, but that whole concept of the firmament is just... crazy.
But we've also got an established water cycle that children learn about at 6 years old here in the UK.
Yeah, see this is
water heats up, comes down, goes across, turns into a cloud, comes down, goes again. Yeah, that's your water cycle.
And
that only happens in a round planet with, an atmosphere.
Yeah,
that's how that shit works.
And aside from that, if you're talking about the flood, if there was enough water on the planet to cover the whole planet, up to
where the fuck did it go?
Where is it now? Yes, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
It has to go somewhere.
Yeah.
It doesn't just disappear. I mean, unless, of course, you're going to go back with miracles. Maybe God got a fucking straw and sucked it all up or something. I don't know, but...
Yeah, or maybe like all the islands just floated but slowly once everyone was dead. I don't know.
No.
The Earth expanded.
Yeah.
It's always
it's always
the
something.
answer is God. We don't question God's ways or what he did or whatever. That's how they get around it. So
these people who want to talk about the flood and the ark, though, just remind them, and I'm sure Ring told me this, didn't Ken Ham have to claim on his insurance because his ark got water damage?
Yeah.
And got destroyed by rain?
Yeah.
Because he built it like a prick. Also, it's the dimensions given for the ark. I'm sure someone's tried to build it at some point, and I vaguely remember them saying that it was an engineering impossibility to build an ark big enough to house all those animals and humans and actually be seaworthy, or even capable of floating.
On top of that, the description of the ark is it only has one window. Now, even if you to go for the minimum thing of 40
you would
days
suffocate
and 40
in that
nights,
easily.
All of that dung from all of those animals, how the hell do you get it off the ark? If you can't get it off the ark, you've got all that sulfur dioxide from the shit, and that stuff builds up, and you will eventually kill everything. Only that,
you will just drown in dung.
Not only that, you could not light a fire inside the ark because
I was going to say
stuff goes
the methane.
So the first night you will freeze to death, and then you will drown in dung. You'll probably suffocate because not enough air is getting in, even if you allow for the fact that wood will allow some air between. It's still not going to be enough
the wood would expand
sustain all those
in the water,
creatures,
wouldn't it? So you'd
and it would become watertight.
Yeah.
So it would be, it would be a nasty way to go.
Why do they love the
Um,
flood story so much? I don't get it. Like, there's a shit ton of stuff in Genesis, but they really go like gung ho for this fucking flood story,
And
and I don't know why.
historically speaking, it's obvious that the flood story is borrowed from the Epic of Gilgamesh. So
yeah.
I don't get it. Why does everything in your book have to be a true and factual account? Jesus spoke in parables. They weren't true and factual. They were just parables.
Because they believe that God wrote this fucking book. Like
The
God
thing
wrote
is,
it
the Bible
through...
didn't.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
the Bible didn't come by facts from heaven. I
No,
love
yes,
that
it did.
quote. It's years old. The Bible did not come by facts from heaven.
God literally came down to earth and wrote that shit. Okay.
No, God didn't have a pen and paper. Fight me, bitch. Okay, there are not enough stones on the planet to carve all that shit into.
Yeah. So it's just
Okay.
one of
Anyway,
the things
God was
that
too busy covering up for all these pedophile priests in the future.
Yeah.
I love that young Earth creationists
Also,
believe
like,
that the
I'm
Earth
sorry.
was created before the sun. So
Can I
that's
just,
crazy.
if Jesus spent 3 days on the cross and died for the sins of humanity, it must be a really short fucking sentence for being a paedophile. Because 3 days for the sins of the whole of humanity. 3 days isn't enough for the sins of his own goddamn priests. Like,
Yeah.
come at me. Also, a 3-day crucifixion. If you read it, so they put him up there on the Friday, and he died. No, sorry,
He
they
died
put him
on
up there on
Friday.
the Wednesday.
Yeah.
He died on the Friday and then rose on the Sunday.
Which is 2 days, not 3.
Yeah.
Fucking idiot.
So the Wednesday to the Friday, okay. First of all, the way the crucifixion is depicted is problematic at best from a historical standpoint. Most crucifixions were tied on, not nailed on, because there was no need to nail them on. Second of all, the whole thing about breaking his legs and everything else and this prophet and what have you, they literally hung there. There was no stand for him. They were literally made to hang there. The whole point of crucifixion is that you suffocate because you can't get air into your lungs because your arms have been held up too long.
Yeah.
It's a slow, painful death while being exposed to the elements.
Mm-hmm.
It is not meant to be a gory death.
Well,
Your
most of
body
them
will look
drowned,
untouched.
Kind of weird.
Exactly,
isn't it?
they drowned in their own lungs. That's what crucifixion does. Yes, they were whipped and beaten beforehand, but largely that would have just weakened them. Okay, the average crucifixion, most of the soldiers, I'll be honest, I would not expect a crucifixion to go on for more than a day. So them claiming it went on for 3 is stupidness, because the soldiers weren't allowed to go home until the last person being crucified was dead. So most of them would probably wait until sundown and stick a spear in the bloke.
Yeah, that
and be
whole
done with it because they want to go home
of
for
a
the
spear
supper.
being stuck into Jesus is probably the most accurate thing in the whole crucifixion.
Yeah,
because the
probably
soldiers
the most accurate
did
thing.
that to relieve the suffering. Most of them didn't like seeing the people suffer on the crosses.
Yeah,
So
and you've got to realise
so
most of
much.
the people who were crucified were probably slaves who'd killed their masters, were non-citizens.
people who stole a loaf of bread.
Yeah, exactly. They were not hardened criminals. No. They were runaway slaves, repeated runaway slaves. You know, they were... Okay, a few of them might have been hardened criminals, but for the most part, if you're being crucified, your life was pretty desperate even before that, because you weren't a citizen, and in Roman culture, not to be a citizen, essentially you're a slave or a foreigner, and there was very little social difference between the two, other than the fact that in the case of one person
to be crucified, but the Judeans were considered Roman citizens, weren't they?
So being a citizen is kind of... Oh, it's a really complex thing. They were citizens in the same way that Jamaicans were citizens of Britain under the Commonwealth.
Okay.
They were citizens in the same way that Australians are citizens of Britain. You're not, but you've got the Queen on your currency.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, it's...
It's the greater Roman Empire, but you're not
Yeah.
actually Roman.
It's the wider Roman Empire, yeah. So you're not actually citizens. Roman citizens wore the toga. Roman citizens took part in the Roman cult, the Roman state religion. Jews, by definition, did not take part in the Roman state religion, and therefore could not be citizens. Because the idea of a citizen not taking part in a Roman state religion, that would be the ultimate blasphemy. That would be, it was unacceptable. It would have been unheard of. Even if you didn't have to believe in it, but you had to follow the rites. You had to make your sacrifices. You had to make your public appearances.
Yeah.
It was very much, Roman paganism was a religion of deeds, not words or belief.
Under that logic, Jesus would never have been crucified by Pilate, because Jesus would have been put to death by his own people.
Plus, he wouldn't have had his own fucking cave to go have his body put in and had guards and shit around it.
Anyone who was crucified was put in a mass grave.
Yeah, mass graves.
Because there were so many crucifixions.
Because the entire point of a crucifixion is that you are an example to others.
Yeah.
It's the Roman equivalent of cutting off a head and sticking it on a pike.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You did not deserve a burial. You were a non-entity. You were lower than the law.
Yeah.
So
this was the punishment
in a
that was
anywhere.
Yeah, there was no grave.
With other criminals. That was the whole point.
Yeah.
But talking about that grave, do you really think one man, even if a couple of angels showed up, he's going to move a rock that fucking size?
Oh. No.
Well, actually, the rock wasn't as big as they claim it to. Never mind.
They claim it was a massive boulder. No one's moving a rock that size. I'm sorry.
Some of the scriptures, one of the scriptures claims it to be this massive boulder that can't be moved. The rest of the scriptures, speaking of this incident, say that two women can move it. So
the thing is, they claim it couldn't be moved in order to prove that no one could have gone in there and stolen the body or anything else. That's where that argument comes from.
But it's only one out of, like, what, 4?
Yeah, but the other ones don't claim that.
Mm-hmm.
And then it opens it up to arguments of, well, how do you know the body wasn't stolen? How do you know it wasn't an imposter? I mean, what kind of people forget what someone looks like 3 days after they're dead?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I know. It's just nuts.
Can I just?
Mm.
Well, maybe
even
really
in an era without photographs, these are his closest friends. This was Mary, Peter, Thomas. These were people he ate with, supposedly lived with. I mean, Jesus and the 12 guys. I'm not being funny, but
we have a meme about that.
We have the meme. We have sexy twink Jesus coming up. They would have lived, breathed. The closest I can probably explain it to, it would be like a soldier coming back from a deployment and not recognizing one of his army buddies 3 days into leave, if he was sober, which I appreciate most soldiers aren't 3 days into leave. But that's the equivalent of. You're not gonna not recognize the dude who you spent that long in that kind of scenario with.
No.
You're just not. It's not reasonable.
Okay.
All right. But you're right. We need to wrap up because we've got.
Let me just give, for those of you who don't know the sexy twink Jesus story, the quick overview of how this happened. There was somebody on Twitter that said something about don't mess with or don't say bad stuff about Jesus or I will throat punch you. So my response was, Jesus is a twink. Come at me, bitch. Yeah, I think that was it. So that's what started sexy twink Jesus. Jen took off with it. So, and this week's meme was made by my son. So you're welcome.
So let's see if I can get it on the screen in the right spot, because it's going to take me a little bit of messing around because I was dumb and didn't organize this one beforehand. So here we have sexy twink Jesus. Let's show this up.
I want to know which one this is now.
So it comes over the top.
Oh, I don't think you've seen it. I think I only sent it to Jen. So yeah, Angel did this one.
So here we go. Here is sexy twink Jesus. So, Sexy Twink Jesus says, I will resize this so we can be visual. There we go. Yeah, Sexy Twink Jesus says, come hither to me, Big Daddy.
I love it. Okay,
so
now you have
Angel.
to follow.
That is amazing.
I will tell him that.
That is amazing, Angel. Thank you. Now, did you get the one I sent you, Jen? Because I made one for this as well.
Oh, do you want to? If you shoot it to me now, I will. I'll just turn this one off, and I'll put yours up as well, and then we should probably end. So
I made my one specifically for this, and there is a reason I kind of waited to discuss the crucifixion and what have you to the end because it's nice and fitting.
You want to shoot it in the chart?
So I am going to send you the picture, and again, you can tell we are so not organised.
Oh yeah, sorry. Too much drinking last night and too much sleeping this morning.
So Sexy Twink Jesus did the only historically accurate thing.
Sexy Twink Jesus says, "Spear me, soldier."
Spear me, soldier.
I love that
we're going to be
that is so much the come hither eyes, isn't it? It's like
yes. See, I think Angel's thing would have been better with that one.
Although I love the picture for Angels.
Yeah, well, you sent me that, so thank you for that. Yes. But we still need to use Angel as a meme because he really does look like a twink. So
yeah. Poor Angel. If he ever watches this, he's gonna kill us all.
Can I just? The greatest miracle Jesus ever performed was being a white man born in the Middle East 2,000 years ago.
I know,
yes.
They're all so white.
There is a master thread that we have, and I should have linked it below, but I didn't. Where I've been posting these, and these ones have been going to be posted as well. And if we find good ones, eventually I'll have a proper outro video that will display some good ones, and together with a bit of music underneath it. But I wasn't that organized for this because we only started this like 2 days ago.
Yeah.
So. Just so everybody knows, after this at 9 o'clock, so in like half an hour, Jen and I are going to be over on Jay's channel with Atheist Pastor to launch my channel, I guess. So if you guys want to come over, please do. It'll be fun. We won't be talking about like history and stuff. We'll just be bullshitting and having fun. So please come. I'm really excited about it. Please.
I'll be there.
And tomorrow morning for you guys in the US, and midday-ish for Becca, and evening for Aussies, Meredith and I will be on my channel, possibly on hers too. I think she might be dual streaming it, with Lizzie Lang, and we'll be talking about cancer and some of the new developments. I think the show's still a go, but I will inform everyone on Twitter. Lizzie has not been well the last couple of days, and if she's not up to it, we may reschedule because I don't want her to have to drag herself if she's not feeling well. So that's so yeah, please catch us over in Jay soon, and keep an eye on Becca's Twitter so you know when she creates her channel, and follow her and do all the right stuff there. And please, if you haven't yet, go and subscribe to Amanda's channel because she is starting to make some awesome content. And if you don't subscribe to Amanda's channel, you will miss some of these shows because this show will not just be on my channel. Some of them will go live on Amanda's as well, probably next week's one.
Yeah, we can do that. And both of them will end up, like, afterwards, they'll both be on each.
Yeah, and I mean, if we ever do 2 shows in a week, there'll be one on each. It just depends on how organized we are and how many guests we end up with. So that's the thing with this.
We have a lot, So we have
quite a few people who are interested in being on. So and we're going to bend our rules a little bit. We were discussing this the other day. We've got so many guys who've actually put their hands up to appearing on the show. We're going to have quite a few honorary bitches. And we're not going to limit it to one a month because, otherwise we're not going to struggle for guests, but we can actually have more guests and more shows and more content by doing that. So, yeah.
Ooh. Token white males.
Oh!
That could be fun.
Yeah.
I would watch you two with a token white male.
Tokyo
Not
White, yeah.
necessarily streaming on YouTube, but I would watch it. Because we may as well turn the tone before we end.
But this,
No, I am joking. I am
we did
joking.
it earlier. It doesn't matter.
But yeah.
Well, thank you, Miss
I look
DangerHissy, for
forward to-
coming.
Yes, thank
We
you.
really appreciate
Thank
it.
you, Hissy.
Thank you for having
we
me.
will so have you again. Because you are so much fun, and we look forward to your channel and being guests on your channel too, because that's gonna be fun.
Yes.
Definitely. I definitely need a climate scientist. I definitely need like a tech person, and I just need both of you because you're both awesome anyway.
Thank you. And so are you, honey.
All these streams at the end always turn into a love fest. It's really cute and cuddly.
No.
Because
Gives me
we
feels.
are awesome friends
TikTok
and
was
we love
bad
each
this
other.
morning, though, because everybody was drunk. So,
Yeah.
well, not me, but everybody else was drunk. So,
You're
I
drunk
mean,
now.
Six Pack turned into a bit of a sub fest this morning as well,
did,
to be
yeah.
fair.
yeah.
It did. Have you gone back and watched it now you're sober?
No, I never watch me
You
drunk.
probably should.
What did I
You
do?
probably should, Jen. You were very fun. You were a lot of fun.
I'm always fun.
Yeah. You should probably watch that.
No, I don't think I want to.
Can you see the terror in her eyes?
I wasn't that bad. I was very open to everyone though. I
Incredibly open.
Okay, we should wrap it up so
Alright.
we can get over to
You
Jay's.
guys get over to Jay's
Yeah, we're
channel
gonna wrap up
and join us over there. And thank you. We love you all, and we will
Think
see you in the
critically,
next one.
bitches.
Yes.
Please.
Oh, so
Bye,
I'm
y'all.
gonna do it. Try not to choke on the selfie stick.
Oh, God.
Take care, be good, and if you can't be good, as always, be careful.
Bye.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.